our producers, John Carpenter, and his producing partner.
I didn't know John
Deborah
Carpenter
Hill.
was a producer of the Beanholes.
What? Our producer, yes. Mr. John Carpenter, everybody.
The Beanholes, it's Eric and Nate, the Beanholes, they're really pretty great, so shut up and listen to them talk. Eric and Nate.
Welcome to the Beanholes. I'm Nate.
I'm Eric.
And today we are taking a journey into the multiverse. We are looking at Halloween and what might have been, what could have been, things that did not happen in our universe, but
Probably happened in another.
Yes.
And for a horror series that didn't really get supernatural until later entries, it actually has its own bit of multiverse in that they've kind of rebooted and ignored sequels time and time again, including the new one that just came out.
Yeah, as we mentioned, I think before a couple weeks ago, they are treating this current movie that's coming out this year as a sequel to the original Halloween and not at all taking into account anything else that ever happened.
Right.
So if I'm not mistaken, that means Laurie Strode isn't
a sister.
Isn't the sister.
Right, which they
well,
did.
what if they said he is?
Ooh.
She is.
They
They do that same twist all over again.
I guess they could do that, but it has that information didn't come out until Halloween 2, the original Halloween 2, and that set on its own little trajectory of Halloween 4, 5, and 6, which followed an entire family story, which was Michael attacking his family. They then ignored that and went back to actually no, they didn't ignore Laurie Strode when they went to Halloween H2O. They went to that timeline where it was Halloween 1, 2, H2O, and Resurrection. But that made it more simpler of Michael just wanting to kill his little sister, not really caring about extended family. And then they ignored it completely now again for Halloween and then this new Halloween 2018. Right. Rob Zombie's remakes have went back to that, but Halloween 2007, Rob Zombie's first movie, had everything kind of combined into one movie, so they didn't really need the sequel to give you the twist of Laurie Strode being his younger sister, because they spent an entire chunk of the first movie devoted to his family and his young sister, his older sister, and what had happened. So it's really interesting to, when you have other film series that deal fully in supernatural, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, even Chucky, that didn't divulge off the path as much as Halloween has, and I kind of like it this way. I think it's a little bit more creative to be able to go, all right, let's not worry about 5 and 6, let's make another movie that diverts the path from 4, which hasn't been done with this. But
okay, we accidentally filled up our camera's storage, and now we're back.
Here we are.
So you were saying it's more creative to be willing to throw out some of your recent work in order to come up with the movie you want.
I guess it depends on the kind of person you are when you watch movies. I can appreciate a movie series like Child's Play, which has maintained the same storyline from the
stain.
That is one heck of a stain. They've maintained a cohesive storyline from the first Child's Play all the way to Cult of Chucky. I can appreciate that. And they do obviously have to be creative to kind of change your expectations. But I do like when we can have multiple paths break off from one another, because it's interesting. It's an interesting conversation you can have. Yeah. And if you want to hear more about each individual movie and what they're about, you can listen to our history of the Halloween series. But like I said, for a really non-supernatural series to have so many timelines is kind of cool.
Yeah,
it's kind of cool. Now, speaking of Rob Zombie's Halloween series, there was a planned third entry in which Rob Zombie himself wasn't going to return. He did, after he finished Halloween 2, said he was done, but of course, money speaks, and I believe it was the Weinstein Company who were looking to make a third Halloween movie in that trilogy.
Oh, yes, it was the Weinstein.
Yeah. Originally, when they first were claiming the idea of this movie, it was going to be called Halloween 3D, which it was going to come out at the time that 3D had a nice resurgence in cinema, like Avatar, and even in horror, My Bloody Valentine 3D came out. And they actually got the director of My Bloody Valentine 3D to direct Halloween 3D. But in a weirder way, before they actually hired that guy to be the director, they had tried to get the director of Friday the 13th Part 3, which was also filmed in 3D. So they were going after 3D horror directors specifically for Halloween. There's not much known about the movie because what the plot that was eventually released online, this movie wasn't made, was about Michael Myers on death row, ready to take his last breath, breaks out of holding. There's two girls involved. One is a daughter of one of Michael Myers' victims. The other one is a daughter of a cop who spent his entire life apparently trying to capture Michael Myers to no avail. So both of these girls are involved watching him on death row. All of a sudden he breaks out and their friends are now involved and what have you. One of the producers of the movie later on came out and said that plot wasn't solidified. That even though that was one that they were working on, that wasn't the official final plot of what ended up being called Halloween Returns, which is such a cliche tagline.
Well, I think so is Halloween 3D.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. But the biggest issue with this movie and why it didn't get made is that the Weinstein Company at some point ended up losing a ton of money and were not able to create the movie. And I believe things went to Dimension Films, and they even
What year was this?
This was before any of the current issues with the Weinstein Company.
I hear they lost a lot of money more recently as well.
In 2009, they were financially not doing well. The rights to the Halloween franchise went to Dimension, and then Dimension weren't making the movies, and they reverted back to, I believe, it's Universal now.
All right.
Has them, so.
Universal does love their monsters.
Yeah, they do. I mean, they have a long history with the Universal monsters. But have you seen the Rob Zombie Halloween movies?
Nope.
None of them.
Not a one. Not one of the two.
Not one of the two. It was weird because I believe at the end of the second one, Michael Myers gets killed by a firing squad, like a SWAT team, fires all of their rounds on him, and he dies. I don't remember if there was a tease that his body was still alive, but...
Well, that would just be him being alive.
Well, they've done that in many of the films. He seems to be dead, and then you get a little tease that he's still alive.
It's a hallmark of the slasher genre.
Yeah, which they started, but not really officially. It was, I mean, before that it was Norman Bates was kind of the first movie slasher, but that really wasn't a part of the genre. The 3D thing, I'm glad that things didn't work out because it just became it went from being a gimmick to artsy to being back to being a gimmick again. Yeah. So other than that, there were a few other points in the Halloween series that they did try to make another return in other movies. Mm-hmm. They did. Now, at one point, Halloween 3, which we did talk about in full in our history, was planned to have Michael Myers as a part of it at first concept. But then our producers, John Carpenter, and his producing partner.
I didn't know John Carpenter was a producer of the Beanholes.
What? Our producer, yes. Mr. John Carpenter, everybody. Oh, he refuses to come out. Oh, my goodness. Wow. John Carpenter and Deborah Hill immediately kind of cut that out. So that idea, whatever that third movie could have been, I'm sure eventually happened to Halloween 4. We're going to go in depth of the 4 main timelines of the Halloween series. So our first one is the original series timeline, which included Halloween 1 and 2, directed by John Carpenter, and Halloween 4, 5, and 6, which there's no 3 because 3 is an anthology film about corruption of business and killing children.
Yes.
Fun stuff.
Was it witches?
Yeah, it had to do with more sorcery and witchcraft and stealing souls and whatnot.
Right.
There was definitely more supernatural.
So the story of Michael Myers, the original timeline, and what was it? 1, 2, 4, 5, and
6 technically.
Okay.
It's weird because in a lot of the marketing, it is Halloween 6, I believe the Curse of Michael Myers. But then in later like DVD and VHS releases, they completely dropped the 6 from it, so it just became Halloween: The Curse of Michael Myers.
Right.
Just to confuse people.
I'm looking at your thumbnail. Oh, okay. See, I thought the way that this thumbnail here, I don't know if you can see it here, but it really looked like a 7 to me, and I was getting very confused because I don't remember
There being a 7.
Yeah. Not that I've seen almost any of these, because I'm just not haven't been a huge fan. I'm becoming a fan, especially with our recent watch of
the first Halloween
original
movie.
one. Yeah.
Yeah, which when making that movie, there was no idea of a sequel, because even back then, now we're pretty sequel crazy.
Yeah.
Back then, they weren't really that crazy about sequels. But they did come back for Halloween 2, which they definitively killed Michael Myers. There wasn't even a tease at the end of that movie of he's alive. He burned.
Right.
He burned alive. He was dead. That was it. That was the end of Michael Myers. People had such a hard time with the idea that there would be a Halloween 3 with no Michael Myers that, of course,
they didn't watch it.
Yeah, they didn't watch it. It almost, I believe it bombed in theaters, and I think if it didn't bomb, it only made a slight amount of profit. Not enough for them to go, hey, let's keep doing this idea. Actually, I believe I recently read that if they were going to continue the anthology movies, the 4th one would have been more about ghosts.
Ooh, spooky.
It's about Boo Berry coming to life and taking over the world. Halloween 4 brings back Michael Myers that basically after burning alive, he's been in a coma this whole time, which it's insane, but it works for what they're trying to do.
I know when I get burned alive, I like to recuperate with a nice long coma.
What's silly is that in the first Halloween, he doesn't seek out to wear the blue jumpsuit and have that mask. Those are the things he just happens to find on his way to Haddonfield. In Halloween 4, he does seek out to...
Yeah, you have to find that stuff again.
He wants to wear a blue jumpsuit and wear that mask, which is noticeably a worse mask. It seems more clean, and it's definitely not the classic Willie Shatner mask. Which, here's the thing. A lot of people think that William Shatner mask was a Star Trek mask, which it very much could have been, but it was actually made from a mold of another William Shatner movie from the time, where I forgot the name of the movie, but in the movie he actually loses his eyes, and his face looks just like the Michael Myers mask. So
that makes sense.
The assumption is that the mold from that movie was then created to make a mask, either from that movie or...
So they didn't just go out to their local party city and buy a Captain Kirk mask for making Halloween.
Pretty much.
They did or they didn't?
They did. I don't know if they did. The whole point is that I don't know if that mold was made for Star Trek.
Got it.
What they might have done is because it was a William Shatner mold, they may have taken that and said, okay, here's a Captain Kirk mask.
Yeah.
But it also could have been from that movie.
I thought it was actually a mask like they had in props, like the studio had. But
right. There are a few the prosthetic artists out there in Hollywood. I know that there's one big one that actually keeps all of the molds of any of the actors who come in. And the issue with that, though, was actually a complete side story, because this isn't crazy. I'm wearing a Back to the Future shirt. Back to the Future 2 doesn't have Crispin Glover.
Right.
And what they ended up doing was they ended up taking the makeup. They took a mold of Crispin Glover from this makeup artist and recasted a mask for an actor to wear so he would look like Crispin Glover. And that was a huge lawsuit later on, because Crispin Glover is like, you can't use a mold of my face as a mask for another actor. It's crazy side note there.
Which, of course, I'm sure led to many contracts, most contracts, including a clause that the studio has the right to use your likeness.
Pretty much. So Halloween 4, 5, and 6 are kind of its own trilogy and really goes into very weird territory. Even by the 6th one, where they kind of confirm there's a supernatural cult that has kind of been using Michael Myers as like the reason he's a killer and the reason he's going out there and killing his family is it's this whole part of like the cult of Thorn. It's a part of their ritual.
Oh, that.
Yeah, those silly people. And their whole plan is to just take over the world or whatever a cult would want to do. But
it works for most Marvel villains.
Yeah, it works out. But that's kind of what killed the franchise at the time, because people, if you've been watching these movies up to number 6 and then all of a sudden it's he doesn't die because he's supernatural and there's a cult controlling him. So it's not just a kid who grew up to become a killer. It's this whole church.
It's a Satan-powered killing machine.
That doesn't seem fun.
That sounds kind of fun to me.
Yeah, but if that was maybe Halloween 2, if they kind of did something like that, maybe that would have been jumping the shark. But throughout this entire trilogy, he's attacking his niece. Laurie Strode had a daughter. Jamie Lee Curtis does not show up in these movies at all, and throughout the entire 3 movies, he's just trying to kill his niece. By the 3rd, he at least in the producer's cut of Halloween 6, which we talked about, he becomes the father of a child between him and his niece, which is really gross. Yeah, and people wonder why that movie didn't do well and killed the franchise for a while.
Well, if it didn't do well, then people already weren't going to see it.
Yeah, I think the marketing, I was only 5 or 6 at the time when that movie came out, but I can only imagine that the marketing probably didn't. That movie got cut to shreds, pun intended. That's why there was a producer's cut, just kind of on the kind of underground for nerds to watch. That was a more cohesive cut, more understandable. I think what happened was after the movie was done, whatever producers were left realized how silly a lot of the movie was, and they cut it up to
silly incest.
Yeah, take that part out and just kind of release what they could, what they thought would be a better movie, which was in fact wrong. So our second timeline picks up another 5 or 6 years after Halloween Resurrection, which they completely ignore 4, 5, and 6. They make a proper Halloween 3, and it's called Halloween H2O. 20 years later, so a more water-based sequel.
All right. Okay, so
that one returns to Laurie Strode and her timeline.
What's this pumpkin all by itself?
I think that should just show you that these are the original movies, because that's that pumpkin shows up at the beginning of both of those movies. Show this off.
Show off this. There's a pumpkin in between the first 2 movies.
That's a classic
on
pumpkin.
On our timeline, we're consulting.
So we have Halloween 2.
Jack-o'-lantern. I'm sorry, everyone. I didn't mean to be racist. Okay, so Halloween 2.
And Halloween Resurrection.
And H2O.
Yeah. Halloween H2O obviously picks up 20 years later with Laurie Strode in hiding. Completely changed her name. She's a teacher. She has a son. So she doesn't have a daughter.
Yogurt.
She sells Activia. And kind of like in the new movie, she's kind of been expecting that Michael Myers would come back. But I don't know. I at least in this sense, I think it's sillier for her to be waiting for him because he burned alive.
Yeah.
Whereas,
is she really waiting, or is she just a traumatized person?
She's more traumatized. The new movie clearly is Michael Myers is known to still be alive, and she's just ready for it. But in this movie, she definitely has a lot of trauma attributed to Michael Myers, who does end up returning and finding her, going after her, and by the end of the movie, spoilers, she kills Michael Myers.
She seems to be pretty good at thinking she did that. By ambulance. By ambulance, yes. That's a scene I have seen.
You've seen the scene?
I've seen the scene.
It is, in fact, not Michael Myers, according to canon, where Michael decided...
According to the Resurrection.
According to Halloween Resurrection, Michael Myers decided at some point to swap clothes with the worker in the ambulance and cut out his tongue so he couldn't talk and go, "Hey, I'm not Michael Myers." And that's who Laurie Strode killed.
Yeah.
It was not Michael Myers.
Did he, super glue the mask to his face?
I can only imagine. There's probably a super glue in the ambulance. It wouldn't make sense.
That would make sense. You can use super glue to close up some wounds.
Yeah. I think that these 4 movies work better than with 4, 5, and 6 because it does just continue the story of Laurie Strode, which I think is a part of what made the first 2
Would you call that the story Strode?
I am now.
Okay.
It feels like a more complete story, and Halloween Resurrection, for as much as I like parts of that movie, I think it ruins it by killing Laurie Strode in the beginning of the movie. Mm-hmm. So if you watch Halloween, Halloween 2, and Halloween H2O, I think that's a nice trilogy right there.
Yeah.
That's a nice trilogy. But H2O made so much money that, of course, they were like, well, we're making another one, and we're going to put Jamie Lee Curtis on the cover in short hair, even though she has long hair in the movie and she gets killed. Marketing. Which also includes a fight scene with Busta Rhymes in a burning garage.
Between Busta Rhymes and Laurie Strode?
Yes. No, Busta Rhymes and Michael Myers.
Okay. Is his character named Busta Rhymes in the movie?
Yes, but he's not the rapper Busta Rhymes.
He's just a guy.
He's a guy named Busta. It's Buster, but he prefers Busta.
Does Vin Diesel come in and call him that?
No, but Vin Diesel would make a great Michael Myers, size-wise.
All right.
Don't take the mask off. Keep the mask on. He doesn't need to talk.
I mean, the original Michael Myers is a very non-intimidating,
small and scrawny guy.
I think he's tall, but I might be wrong about that. They shoot him
just
from
be
below
6
a lot.
foot. You know what? We can find this out.
Oh God, no, I don't care.
I care. Nick Castle, height. This is how creepy the internet is.
Or it's how creepy you are that you use the internet just to look up the height of your
He's
friends
5'10".
That is 2 inches taller than me.
So
and
he's
17 inches shorter than you.
That is true. All right, so that is our second timeline. Halloween Resurrection it did decently in theaters, but it definitely was not a hit.
Mm-hmm.
Not a hit that they wanted. And of course, around that time, I believe the remake of Texas Chainsaw Massacre came out, which is really good, and it's one of my favorite horror movie remakes. That it just kind of all the studios said, all right, well, let's start rebooting all of our old franchises, which is what came next. Our third timeline is the Rob Zombie Halloween movies.
This one just shows a jack-o'-lantern and then the 2 Rob Zombie movies.
Yeah, showing you that it has no connection to the original. Do you want to show it off to the camera?
Yeah, I do, but I want to
I got it.
It won't scroll. Are you seeing the problem? It will not scroll to the right spot. There we go.
Boom.
There you go, baby.
Look at that.
Yeah, good reflection of the studio lights.
Rob Zombie, at this point, I think Halloween was his 3rd movie. He had made House of a Thousand Corpses, which gets a lot of... Have you seen that movie?
No, but I can't help but ask. Do you think he would be as successful in any of his ventures if he was Bob Zombie?
Yes.
Okay, good to know.
I think Bob Zombie works just as well. House of a Thousand Corpses gets a lot of flack, but to me it is such a good movie that feels like a classic 70s or 80s horror movie. it's kind of corny, but it's fun. His second movie, which was a follow-up called The Devil's Rejects, which a lot of people love, and honestly, to this day, it is Rob Zombie's masterpiece. I prefer House of a Thousand Corpses because I like that Rainn Wilson and Chris Hardwick are the male leads.
Mm-hmm.
It's just
interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's an interesting combo. So he was brought in to remake Halloween, and
so Rainn Wilson is he's so nerdy he's accidentally cool, and Chris Hardwick is someone who desperately tries to not
come off too nerdy.
Even though he came to fame under the banner of Nerdist. Interesting.
Yeah, and they actually don't play off the nerdy stuff as well. Rainn Wilson actually, in the movie. Rainn Wilson actually turns into a fish boy.
Okay, great.
Yeah, you should watch it.
No, it sounds pretty predictable.
So we have this first Halloween movie. Rob Zombie, to his credit, did feel weird making this without having the blessing of John Carpenter, and he wanted to make sure it was done right.
Mm-hmm.
He did end up getting the blessing of John Carpenter, but later on, John Carpenter said it's a shit movie.
He retracted his blessing?
He not really retracted his blessing, but he wishes there was
You may marry my daughter.
Yeah.
You are an awful husband of my daughter.
That pretty much what he said. So the first Halloween, it does follow the original storyline, but it does take itself, it gives itself some time to kind of give you an insight onto Michael Myers' childhood. He's a bullied kid. His family bullies him.
Now I'm rooting for him.
Yeah. But he just seems down on his luck and then just ends up snapping on Halloween night, but forgets to kill his baby sister, which it even shows Malcolm McDowell plays Dr. Sam Loomis in that movie, which I recently remembered Sam Loomis is also a character in the original Psycho. So it's a nice little nod. Yeah. It shows a lot more of their relationship, where the first Halloween you are just told that Dr. Sam Loomis is his doctor and has been caring for him for years, but you don't get to see their relationship.
Right.
And out of everything, that to me is the most important thing of the Rob Zombie remake, is you get to see both sides of their situation, and you understand why Loomis would have so much responsibility over Michael Myers.
Yep.
And it's not just a guy running around Haddonfield. It's a good movie, and it's a good remake, and I know you have mentioned that you're at least someone who wouldn't care to know the backstory as much.
Well, I just never saw the movies.
Yeah.
It's not that I dislike them. I just happen to not see them.
Okay. Halloween 2, though, I think I mentioned this in our history, is probably the worst drama film I've ever seen.
Fantastic.
At this point, Rob Zombie said, okay, I think I made a pretty good Halloween remake. Halloween 2, I want to go off in a completely different direction, which, good idea, but the movie focuses way too much on Laurie Strode and her trauma post being attacked, which you can do if you also do something interesting with the main star, which is Michael Myers, and they do literally nothing with him. I think in the entire movie he kills 2 people, and there's no progression, and his big scene is, as I mentioned earlier, being killed by a SWAT team in the middle of this field in front of Sam Loomis, where he pulls off the mask and he screams no. He screams something. It's like the first time Michael Myers ever spoke in any of these movies, and it's just corny, and it comes off bad, and it's just I've watched it twice, and after the first time I thought I didn't like it. A few years later I said, all right, maybe I'll give it another shot, and I don't think it's a movie I'll ever watch again because it just is not good.
Sounds great.
Yeah, and now we are at our current timeline, which is now back to 2 movies, Halloween 1 and Halloween 2018. It's just Halloween.
So we're now there. The current timeline is the movie Halloween
Followed
and the
by
movie Halloween.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. I thought about it. I wish they added some sort of tagline or a subtitle or I don't know whatever you would call that, just Halloween, something. I feel like it would have. I understand why they wouldn't want to call it Halloween 2 because that already exists, but call it something. I don't know. I feel like just Halloween doesn't.
Yeah. So I guess we will we'll find out how it all or how the new timeline continues.
Yeah.
And
Which
we'll see this a little later this month.
they've said that they are considering other sequels. That they honestly weren't really thinking about sequels too much when making this movie. They wanted it to be everything that it could be, but they have talked about it, which to me spoils the idea that Michael Myers is probably not going to die. But I don't.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I mean, it's how many times has he died, and they started working on sequels.
Right, but I think these guys, because they're
Wasn't
these two
actually all that
guys,
much, but that's
these two guys, Danny McBride and David Gordon Green, I don't think that they would go to so much trouble to bring it back to the original story to then kill him and then in the third one make something ridiculous. So
that would be great. They should remake the third
Season of the Witch.
Yeah.
That should be remade, but just call it Season of the Witch instead of Halloween 3. That would be a good idea. But that's it. I mean, who knows if in another 20, 30, 40 years they probably will go back and do something like this again. I don't think this is the last time.
I think in 20 years we're just not even going to have the holiday anymore. So
yeah, they're already arresting like older kids who go trick or treating this year. So who knows? Maybe every year that age will go down.
Wait a minute, they're doing it this year? You said they're already doing it this year.
Yeah. Well, at least they've announced they were doing it.
We heard you went trick or treating. It's not Halloween.
Any kids over 12 caught trick or treating past like 8 p.m. in some places, they're just getting arrested.
That's great.
Isn't that? Love it. I'm sure they'll lower the age every year, so eventually it'll be like, if you're 7 and you're trick or treating past 6 p.m., you are getting arrested.
All right.
And that's it for this episode, so keep on beaning. 3D.
The Beanholes.
Look it up.